Welcome back to the 127 Fit podcast. Today's guest is a realtor, CEO of Mile High Continuing Care, and the founder of Mile High Sober Living. Today's guest is Brice Hancock. Brice, I want to welcome you to the 127 Fit podcast.
Quentin, thanks for having me. It's nice to have you here.
For sure. So Brice, we are just going to jump right into what I like to call kind of the conversational warm-up. I kind of like to ask the same 4 questions to all my guests just to, again, kind of get that ball rolling in regards to our conversation. The first question that I have for you, Brice, is how do you start your day? Do you have a specific morning routine or morning ritual that you like to stick to on most mornings?
I do. I meditate every single morning. I'll pray briefly every single morning. I try to get up, and before I get into too much on my phone, I try to go do that, just to try to get grounded and set, and because I've had days where I wake up already stressed out with my brain like spinning out in my brain about what's going on, and I need to get get out of that before I get going.
Okay, cool. Now, in regards to your meditation, is that something that you kind of like follow an app in regards to that meditation, or is that just kind of like your own little mind shift or mindset? What are the specifics of that meditation practice in the morning for you, Brice?
So it's I like to mix it up because I can get in a routine, and then it loses its effectiveness for me. So I like to mix it up, but it almost always involves some sort of music.
Okay.
I get on the floor, I'll get on my knees first. I'll stretch. I'll lay on my back. Sometimes I'll sit like a typical meditator, but not often. I usually lay there with my eyes closed.
Okay.
Sometimes I'll do a guided meditation. It always has like an element of gratitude in there, an element of prayer in there, and then an element of what do I want to bring to the day? Who do I want to be? You know what I mean? Do I want to be like a reactive person, a laid back person, a funny person? And I'll kind of just do that.
Okay, awesome. Now, I want to touch on what you just said in regards to what type of person you want to be that day. You kind of mentioned the word like reactive and things like that. Now, so when you are kind of going through the type of person that you want to show up in the world each day, what type of person, generally speaking, are you looking to be each day that you have to live?
I want to be, like all the typical things. I want to be a good father. I want to be a good boss. I want to be a good servant to the community. I want to be helpful to the people that the clients that come to my business.
Yeah.
I want to be a good friend. I also don't want to be reactive. I don't want to be a reactive person. I want to be, when you're in that flow. And I want to be able to overcome my triggers. Tony Robbins says the only thing you need to overcome is your triggers, right? And I don't want to react out of fear. I don't want to do that fear-based thing all day long, where life's coming at me and I'm reacting to it. I want to be, in charge and kind of co-creating with whatever my higher power is.
Beautiful.
What I mean?
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. That's powerful stuff. The second question that I have for you, and for the next 3, if there's more than one, please feel free to share, Brice. Don't limit yourself to one if there is more than one. But is there a favorite book that you have, or is there a book that you like to gift often?
I think my favorite book, and has been for the last 2 or 3 years, is The Power of Now.
Okay.
Eckhart Tolle. And it's on my nightstand now, and has been for a couple years.
Okay.
It's not like the kind of book you're going to sit down and just blaze through the whole thing.
Right.
It's so engrossing, but it's I can read a little bit and go,
Cool.
Put it down, and it kind of it gets me in touch with what we were just talking about in the meditation. Get into that flow instead of trying to run the universe from from that control center in my head. I can be mindful of what's going on. You know that book?
It's come up. I would say, at least 5 times throughout my podcast conversation.
He was like this guy. He's like a philosopher and a spiritual teacher. He was really depressed, like a very depressed, anxious person and suicidal, right? And was having like one of those episodes of suicidal ideation. And he was just like in his head going, I can't stand myself anymore. And then he had this epiphany, like, who can't stand who? I can't stand myself. How many people am I? And if I'm saying this, who's listening? And he just said it like the whole universe changed for him. He became the listener to the voice in his head, right? Because there's like reality, and then there's the commentary on reality, which is the voice in our head. And it's not always our friend, and it's not always right. It's like a fear-based voice. And he just like, he said he spent like a year just kind of wandering around in this daze, super happy. And,
wow.
And it's just like a pretty cool book. So.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Awesome. I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
Now, for the next question, it's, do you have a favorite quote, mantra, or word? And I like to kind of preface this with, this could come from maybe the current season of life that you're living in. It could come from a previous season of life that you went through. Because for me, I call myself a worrier. I love words. I love language and all that type of stuff. And I know, like, every season of life for me, there's like either a word, a mantra, a quote that's really impactful. So maybe it's right now, maybe it's something from the past. But favorite quote, mantra, or word. And again, if you want to share more than one, feel free to share, Brice.
Well, so right now, like I'm going through a divorce. And,
okay.
So like my favorite thing lately, and it involves my morning routine, which is huge for me, is God get in my head before I do. You know, because when you're like, I mean, I don't care who you are, how spiritual you are, how powerful you are, how rich you are, how wonderful you are. If you're going through a divorce, like, there's a lot of fear and uncertainty and bitterness.
Right.
And
right,
resentments. Right. And so I just like, but once again, it's like, I don't want to be that guy who lets that stuff control him. And so I just say, God get in my head before I do. And, you know, like another thing that I try to do is to leave, you know, and my ex and the kids as unscathed as possible throughout this process. And even try to help them, you know, like that. The old way of thinking is protect myself.
Of course.
Screw them.
Right.
And I'm trying to have a new way of thinking, which is like, we can all win.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, I want to ask you, how did you come to this place where, you know, this quote, God get in my head before I do? Where did that come from? Where did you find that quote or those words?
Heard it at a meeting. I go to a lot of I'm a recovering alcoholic and drug addict, and I got sober through a 12-step, you know, support groups and meetings, and I still go to like probably 5 a week. And I heard somebody say it, and I was like, that's good.
Perfect.
You know, you hear those little nuggets from people, right? And you're like, like God's talking through them.
For sure. That's why that's a great point, Brice, because I know for myself personally, I'm really trying to focus on being a very intentional listener and being a person that is very open, because literally, if we are open each day of our lives, if our eyes and our ears and our heart and our soul are open, there is so much that we can learn, and there's so much that we can gain from other people. Sure. It doesn't matter if they're the person on the corner, asking for money, or if they're a high-level CEO and anything or whatever in between. Like, if we're open, we can learn from any human being. Do you agree with that?
Totally. You got to stay teachable, right? Like,
yes.
Like I have a sponsor. Like what we do in this 12-step thing is somebody who's done it before will sponsor somebody who's newer. And I'm not new anymore, but I found a man who's 46 years sober, super smart. Right?
Yeah.
And he said, you got to stay teachable. He stays teachable, right? And if you stay teachable, you're always learning. And if you think you know everything, you're shut off, right?
Right.
And if everything's energy, you got to stay humble and teachable.
Cool. Awesome. I
love
that. Absolutely. 100% agree, for sure. Now, I don't know how much you listen to podcasts, but do you have a favorite or most listened to podcast? If you don't really listen to podcasts, maybe there's something on YouTube or some sort of motivational speaker that you get value out of. So is there a favorite or most listened to podcast?
I think Yeah, I've got lots of
Okay.
but I usually listen to YouTube, but I know that they all have podcasts
Of course,
too.
of course.
Like I like Kyle Cease.
Okay.
I've been listening to Lewis Howes from Hose. I like Joe Dispenza.
Okay.
I like Russell Brand because he's funny. I like Joe Rogan because he's kind of funny.
Yeah,
you know what
yeah.
I mean? He's kind of like the opposite. Like, he's not really my kind of guy. He's kind of a bro kind of guy. But he's super smart, and I like listening to that too. But lately, I've been listening to Kyle Cease, like, Tony Robbins, Brene Brown.
Of course.
I just like, it's always something, like,
Of
it's
course.
like, once again, it's like you hear something, you're like, man, I can apply that to my own life.
Sure.
Or I wish I would have said that. Or I'll start saying it and pass it off as my own.
There you go.
You know what I mean?
I like it. Yeah, those are all powerful spirits, and I found some value in some of the people you just listed off. That's awesome. So, Brice, at this point, I want to kind of transition our conversation into your backstory. So you kind of already mentioned being a recovering alcoholic and things of that nature. We'll definitely get to that. But if you don't mind sharing with myself and the listeners, where did you grow up, and kind of what were those earlier years like for you?
So I grew up in Maryland, outside of Washington, D.C.
Okay.
I was born in Silver Spring, Maryland, and grew up in the country in Maryland. My dad worked a lot, and I was pretty much raised by my mother. My mother's a very driven woman. She exercises a lot.
Okay.
And I've realized this later in life is that, and this might just be my opinion, but it's my opinion. It's my story, right?
Yeah.
She grew up in an alcoholic home, and she doesn't drink.
Mm.
And so I think she said at some point, whether it was intentional or not, I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to do that to my kids. And so, but I felt that like she was not damaged from growing up in that kind of home. But she has her thing, right? And she's prone to depression. She's prone to anxiety. I don't remember a lot of affection growing up.
Okay.
I remember feeling kind of abandoned and kind of like I grew up with the sense that there was a limited amount of love in the world because it's like, not getting that affection. And in retrospect now, my mother was in her early 20s when she had me.
That's young.
It's really young,
absolutely.
right? And like, holy heck, who the heck am I? And I got 2 kids. I have a younger brother. And my father worked a lot. And that's just kind of the way it was. His father, my grandfather, worked a lot. That was the culture. That was how I grew up. But I was always well taken care of financially. And I played sports. And I did well in school.
Yeah.
But I always had this sense, and maybe a lot of us do, maybe all of us do, that I didn't fit in. And I had this fear, like I was afraid of a lot. I was afraid of the whole world, if you really get down to it. And so we moved around a lot, which was tough for a kid who was afraid of everything.
Yeah.
And so when I graduated high school, I went to college, I became a daily blackout drunk because I was terrified of college.
Wow.
And just started drinking, and it just completed me, that feeling of drinking. And it runs in my family, the alcoholism.
Of course, yeah.
You want me to just keep going on this?
Well, let's take a quick step back here. So,
Sure.
in regards to your childhood, I just want to touch on, you mentioned like you felt kind of like abandoned. You had this feeling of abandonment. You said you always kind of felt like you didn't fit in, and there was this fear. As you've kind of like gone through your life and maybe done some of that deep inner work and reflection, where do you think some of those feelings kind of came to be in your life, or is it just something where it's like, you know what, I feel like it was just always there?
I think it was always there, and I just think that maybe it was a sign of the times, maybe it was just my family of origin, but that love was, I know they love me, especially now, but it was a conditional kind of love. You need to get good grades, you need to do these activities. I felt like there was a lot of go away, leave us alone, which is fine, entertain yourself, go play with yourself, go do this. And it just felt like this general, like, uneasiness inside where I didn't feel complete and I didn't feel confident.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like
Absolutely.
I didn't feel confident with other people. I didn't feel connection with other people. That's for sure. I felt very disconnected and I lived in my head, which is not always a great place to be, right?
Right.
So like social interaction was tough for me, and I started having depression in high school and was clinically diagnosed in college with unipolar depression, with hypomania, dysthymic disorder, which is kind of like a form of bipolar disorder. And I don't know if any of that's true now, but that's where I was. I was on medication for depression in college. I think they put me on something.
Yeah. So how is your connection and relationship like with your siblings?
We're not really close because I don't know why we're not really close, but we're not really close. But we're kind of different. I'm sort of I was kind of I was a musician most of my life, kind of a hippie in a way, you know, smoking pot, partying, playing music, and he kind of went the other direction. He joined the Army after high school, and so he's like that guy, and I'm like the other guy. You know what I mean? He's a good dude. He's a good, solid guy. Has a good heart, and you know, has his own journey, right?
Of course.
So I'm not super close to my brother. He lives in Texas. I live here with my parents. I'm very close to my parents.
Yeah.
And so yeah.
Okay. Now you mentioned before we kind of go further into college and things like that. You mentioned sports. You mentioned athletics. You mentioned you know, being like kind of involved in like music and bands and like that and things like that. Was sports an opportunity for you to kind of like have an outlet to maybe put some of your energy and effort and maybe have some sort of connection with other humans, or were you still experiencing a lot of loneliness even within athletics?
Yeah, I could be around a lot of people and still isolate in a way, still feel lonely. But I'm I'm kind of blessed. Like, sports came fairly easy to me. I'm not like a world-class athlete or anything, but I was one of the better kids on the team. And, you know, I got that sense of camaraderie, and I got that sense of, I'm capable of doing some stuff. School, another thing, came fairly easy to me. But I did this thing, you know, like I would play small. I didn't want to get straight A's. I wanted to get straight B's because I would keep everybody off my back. But I wouldn't be like, less would be required of me. Do you know what I mean?
Of course.
So I'd play a little bit small. I did it in sports. I did it in school.
Interesting.
And I don't know what that is or where it was or why it happened. And I'm at the point now where I'm not trying to figure all this stuff out. Like, I'm just trying to live my life and do my best.
I love it.
And be as happy as I can. But back then it was, I didn't see the big picture, right? I didn't have any, and I have a sense of spirituality now that I did not have back then. It was like, if you want a good life, you're going to do it. You go get it. And you got to do these things. And that was a lot for a guy who wasn't super confident.
Okay. So let's transition into college. You kind of already mentioned college. You mentioned getting diagnosed with the depression, and then you also previously touched on, you know, blackout drunk and all that type of stuff. So first of all, where did the drinking kind of like begin? Was it towards the end of high school? Was it not till you got to college? And then I really, if you don't mind sharing, Brice, after we kind of touch on kind of like where the alcohol came into the picture, I'd really like to dive deeper into the depression, if you don't mind, because I know that's just an area in our world that is starting to get more awareness and there's more talk about it, but it's always great to, you know, get somebody's perspective that has struggled with it. So first of all, where did the alcohol come on the scene? And then we'll kind of transition to talking about that depression.
So as soon as, I was drinking in high school, but I believe it was normal. I played sports. I was on the honor roll, you know, had a girlfriend, had friends. Played music, started playing music in high school, in bands and things like that. But as soon as I got into college, the drinking was heavy. Heavy. Daily blackout drinker. I remember throwing up, waking up in vomit. My first semester of freshman year.
Right, yep.
That's a red flag. You know, waking up and vomit from drinking, that's not good. That could have been the end. I could have said, man, I woke up and vomit and I stopped drinking. But I didn't. I drank for another 2.5 decades.
Yeah.
So I just drank every day, all through college. Smoked a lot of pot, tried things like cocaine, hallucinogens, you know, some opiates.
Yeah.
And then when we graduated college, and many of my friends matriculated into regular life, I went the other direction. I moved to Baltimore.
Okay.
And wanted to be a rock star, and I wanted to play in bands, and so I started doing that. And within a few years, I was addicted to heroin and crack. And Baltimore's kind of a gnarly city,
for sure,
and a great place for heroin and crack if you're into that kind of a thing. So that's when it started to get kind of wild because, you know, those kind of drugs, like your life goes down fast. It'll grab you, and it grabbed me. And I met the worst people, and I ended up in the worst situations. And like any kind of, like, you don't meet a lot of old, successful, happy heroin addicts. You just don't, right? And so my life just went down. And so it was bad. And so I ended up moving to Colorado around when I was 26.
Okay.
So I spent 5 years or so in Baltimore. I got to do a lot of cool stuff. I played CBGBs in a band, toured up and down the East Coast. So playing New York City and all that kind of stuff was fun. A lot of clubs in D.C., 930 Club, Hammerjacks in Baltimore, and, you know, recorded some albums. And it was fun.
Right.
But the drugs were bad.
Of course.
Yeah. So crashed and burned there. And, you know, the depression, saw lots of doctors, lots of psychiatrists. You can't treat depression if you're on heroin and crack. And I remember one psychiatrist said, well, you are a polysubstance abuser. You need to stop doing drugs. And so I never saw her again because I didn't want to stop doing drugs. I wanted to continue doing that. And, so, you know, they would give me like one medication for depression that would create mania. So they would say, oh, you're bipolar. I don't know what I was. You know, in retrospect, I think it was untreated alcoholism. Because now I'm not on anything. I'm not on anything. I'm on no medication. I don't believe I have any kind of major depression or unipolar depression or bipolar depression. My anxiety is very low. And if I do have anxiety, it's because I have, you know, 2 companies and 2 kids and 2 ex-wives and 18 employees, and I got a lot going on.
For sure.
But it doesn't overtake me. I sleep good, exercise good. I have a high quality life right now.
Yeah. So, in regards to the depression, you know, when you were in your 20s and things like that, and getting diagnosed clinically, what was the and obviously with the understanding that, you know, you were drinking a lot, you were doing drugs, so that's going to alter the mindset and things like that.
And the chemicals in your body and the chemicals in your brain. And
what was the depression like for you mentally when you did have the clarity? If there was ever any type of clarity outside of the substances, what did that depression feel like? What did it cause within you?
What did it cause within me? It was heavy. You know, it's like a heavy feeling, and it's a very self-centered feeling, like a self-pity and despair and sadness, and all these things are very selfish sounding.
Right.
And if you've ever sat in a room with a lot of depressed people, all they talk about is themselves. And I was exactly the same way. All I cared about was myself. And in a way, I sort of owned it. I kind of, like, that was my personality. Like, you know, I believe that as we go through life, there are certain, like, pivot points. And I believe we choose certain things. I believe at some point I chose that as a personality. I also believe that we come prepackaged. Like, I have 2 sons. They're totally different. One came prepackaged one way, one came prepackaged another way.
Yeah.
That's not to say that things can't happen that will affect you. I believe I chose to be kind of depressed, negative, and sad. And that's just how I chose to exist in the world. Whether I wanted to show up in the world that way or not, I don't think I did. That's what it was like, you know.
Okay. Now, in terms of the drug use and things like that, during that time, was it really just a kind of a way for you to just kind of check out and escape?
Oh,
or
yeah.
was it something else?
It was a way to check out. You know, it shows up like, this is fun, this is great, I can function with people, the fear is gone. And but then when you start doing drugs like heroin and crack, it's different. You're no longer a social person. You know, like, what do they teach us about depression? They teach us that in the hierarchy of needs, like just basic needs, drugs come before food, they come before sleep, they come before shelter. And so, you know, especially being physically addicted to an opiate like heroin or Oxycontins or whatever, you have to have it. Like, you have to have it to function. It's got to be first in your day. And so any kind of grandiose ideas about what I was going to become or how I felt about things didn't make it. You know what I mean? I was just like in survival mode. And so they took over. They took over my whole life. They took over everything. They replaced my life until, you know, it was just me and drugs. And it's not that I hated myself. I hated the drug addict self. You know what I mean? It's kind of a weird thing. But I didn't understand that it was a disease. I just thought that I was making bad choices over and over and over and over.
Right, yeah.
And, you know, I understand now that it's a disease and I don't have a say in it. I'd lost the power of choice. I believed that, I guess I believed everybody was the same in that other people just had more willpower than I did. Like, why couldn't my father have one beer and stop when I had to have 18? It didn't make sense to me. I figured he had more willpower or he was just maybe a better person.
Interesting. Now, what you brought up music several times. And even, you know, as a part of your morning routine, you mentioned music is a part of that. So obviously music up to this point in your life has been a powerful player. What does music do for you? What does music mean to you, Brice?
It was like, I think, well, I mean, it would like certain songs would like create a mood or touch a part inside of me, right? And it was, I believe, was my first escape was playing guitar.
Okay.
I would kill hours. I would just disappear for hours playing guitar. And then it became I believe that if I could become a rock star, I wouldn't have to worry about all this stuff that everybody else has to worry about. Someone would take care of my money. Someone would take care of my finances. Someone, you know what I mean? Like, And it was almost like if enough people loved me, then I would love myself. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of what I thought. Like, if I was like a famous person, then I would finally feel complete.
Interesting.
Which we know isn't true. You're just an incomplete famous musician.
Of course, and there's all kinds of those, and actors and CEOs, and it's everywhere, because you're right. Like the money and the fame and all that, does it make you feel good on some level? Yeah, I'm sure it does. But you know, if we don't, like you said, love ourselves first, if we don't have a firm foundation in our lives, then anything that we're going to get from the outside, it's fleeting. It's temporal.
Yeah, all that external stuff is really just somehow avoiding that hole inside, right?
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so you transition from the East Coast and you move out to Colorado. Now, why Colorado? I mean, we're kind of a long ways away from Washington, D.C., the East Coast. So how did you end up out here? Like, you know, had you been here before? Just kind of unpack
my parents,
that side.
My parents moved out here.
Okay.
And so I just did that thing where my life, it crashed and burned. I had this recording studio. It went under. The band that I was in broke up. The girl that I was in a relationship dumped me.
Yeah.
And I had like nothing except for drug addiction. And I just got sick of being dope sick. And I got sick of not having any money.
For sure.
And so I had this like epiphany. It was just like a moment of clarity. And I moved back to where I went to college. And I moved in with this, it was like a girl I knew and her roommates. And all they had was this little tiny room. It was like the size of a big closet, really.
Okay.
$100 a month. And I moved down there. And I got enough clarity that was like, well, I got to get the heck out of here, or I'm going to die here.
Yeah.
I'm going to die here in Baltimore.
Yeah.
And so I moved, but I was still drinking every day. And so I had the sense that if I could quit doing drugs and just drink, I'd be okay. I could have a music career. Mm-hmm. And so I moved out to Colorado because my parents were out there.
Yeah, okay.
And moved to Evergreen.
Okay.
Which is a great community.
Absolutely.
But it's a very difficult place. I still had that fear and the social anxiety to meet people. So I started bar hopping, and I got a DUI because in Evergreen you got to drive if you're going to go to a bunch of different bars. So I got a DUI, and then I moved down to Capitol Hill, and we have a lot of drugs in Capitol Hill. So I got back on drugs and started smoking crack. But I did go back to school, and I had a couple jobs. Throughout this whole mess, I've been playing music and having different careers of limited success, but I'm having them. Right.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of lucky like that. Like some people can't do that. They can't manage those two things. And so I put together a band out here. Didn't put it together, but we put it together. Me and the guys in the band called Rubber Planet, and we had a fair amount of local success.
Yeah.
I was able to play LA, tour all across the country,
cool.
Make a living playing music. It wasn't a great living, but it was a living.
Absolutely.
And I like that kind of the adventure of, I'm like a serial entrepreneur. I am. I don't want to work for people. And so anytime I was working for people, I was trying to figure out how I could stop working for people. So playing music, and then I started booking bands. And you can make a living booking bands. Once again, not a great living, at least not at the level I was doing it at.
Yeah.
And so I was booking bands and drinking and, on and off drugs. Like I would get on drugs and I'd quit. And then I'd get on drugs and then I'd quit. Sufficiently for a certain amount of time, right? And so I was working for a guy hired me to work at a bar to book his nightclub called the Toad Tavern.
Okay.
So I started booking that club. I started booking a room called the Cricket on the Hill. I was booking some blues tours a little bit and some cover bands up in the mountains and making enough to get by. And then I worked at the Toad, and then I got a job offer to work at Herman's Hideaway, which was a bigger club. And I went to work there, and then the guy that owned the Toad said, I got to get out of this industry. Do you want to buy the Toad? And I said, well, I don't have any money. And he said, well, I'm going to carry the loan for you. And so I fell ass backwards into owning a bar.
That's awesome.
And then I own a bar, right?
Yeah.
Which is a terrible job for an alcoholic.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is, Brice. Yeah.
Right?
So just kind of continue talking about just like, you kind of fell backwards into owning a bar, and that's kind of, and you said like you really were always trying to find ways not to work for other people. So now you have this bar, you have quote unquote your own business. What happens at that point in your story?
So prior to that, like we had some success locally playing music, and then I got married.
Okay.
And so I'm owning the bar. So prior to that, I'm played Red Rocks, doing a lot of touring, a lot of fun. Get the bar. I come up with this idea. I need to grow up and just drink. No more drugs. I'm just drinking. I'm going to get married. I'm going to run this bar to the best of my ability. And then I remember around 2007, that's when I bought it. 2008, the economy tanks.
Yep.
I remember I could feel it. I could see it in the numbers. I could feel it in the general mood of my customers. And then I struggled for another 7 years. And that's when my drinking... And I'm like 2 decades, this disease has already taken from my life.
Yeah.
The last 7, it's like I'm selling alcohol for a living. I'm drinking alcohol from morning till night, and I become physically dependent on alcohol, which had never happened, meaning I have to have it, and I have to drink it in the morning to get rid of the shakes.
Wow.
And it's killing me, but so I'm in and out of the doctor, right? I'm blacking out all the time. I'm just a mess. I don't look good. I don't feel good. So I'm in and out of the doctor. I'm dehydrated, massive anxiety, the depression's back. I can't sleep. I'm totally stressed out. I have gout, which is like a gnarly alcoholic kind of disease. And I'm throwing up blood, and I'm passing blood, and it's not good, right? And so the doctor, so I go to get insurance, health insurance, and I get denied because they say your liver enzymes are too high. I don't even think anything of it. So I'm in and out of the doctor, and I thought I had a broken foot. I thought I kicked something, blacked out, and that's when he said you have gout. And then they did a blood test, and he came back in the room. I remember the day. He came back in the room, and he had his chart, and he showed me his chart, and it said alcohol abuse severe. He said, you're a chronic late-stage alcoholic.
Wow.
He said, you're going to die if you don't stop drinking. He said, your liver enzymes are off the chart.
Wow.
It's probably cirrhotic, which is cirrhosis. Your pancreas is stressed. I can't believe your heart hasn't stopped. He said, I give you a year to live if you don't stop drinking.
Wow.
Yeah, and I remember thinking, all right. So a lot of things go through your head, right?
For sure.
Am I really an alcoholic? Is it just like a mental illness thing? Can I stretch that 1 year out to 4? How bad is an alcoholic death really? Can I manage my drinking and control my drinking and drink less? And so I go through all these things, and I drink for well over a year. And in this time, I have a son.
Wow. Okay.
And so it's like every day, it's like I am dying, but I'm not going to die today. I'm just going to get drunk today. It's the same thing I do every day, right? And so a lot of drama, a lot of fighting, a lot of arguing, terrible marriage, and mostly my fault. And little kid, and so I start going to AA. I start doing a 12-step program. So I'm in and out, and I start to I see people and I meet people that they drink like me, and they don't drink anymore, and they're happy. And I'm skeptical, and they talk about things like God, and I'm like, I'm not on board with this whole religion thing, right? And which is fine at the time, because I'm negotiating the terms of my surrender to alcoholism and to some sense of spirituality in my life, right? And so I relapse bad, and I just go, you know what? Screw this, screw these people. I'm out of here. I'm just going to recommit to the alcoholic lifestyle. But being in that environment had ruined my drinking. I couldn't freely drink the way I drank because I'd seen the other side. I'd seen people that had somehow beat this disease on their own. And so one night I'm at my bar in the office, which is also the liquor closet because it's a small bar anyway. I'm surrounded by liquor, and I have this mental breakdown, this nervous breakdown because I just don't know what I'm going to do. And I called my friend and asked him if he had a gun. And he did not give me a gun. He did talk me into going to, he said he were going to take you to rehab. And so he talked to my ex-wife. And they did not take me to rehab. They took me to a mental hospital, Centennial Peaks. And it's also a detox for alcoholism, right?
Okay.
And so in there, I have this spiritual experience. I just realized, one, I'm not the first person to go through this.
Right.
And I have that moment where it's I got to stop listening to this voice in my head, right? So I'm sitting in the waiting room, and it's got a poster with the benefits of electroshock therapy on the wall. And I'm thinking, that's about right, because I'm probably mentally ill. I'm not sure it's alcoholism still. And so I tell the psychiatrist I play my bipolar card, because I've always had this bipolar card, and they medicate me heavily. And I hate it. And so it's do I want to be a mental patient or just admit that I'm powerless over alcohol, right? And so I have this epiphany. It's like the 4th of July. This was 2013. So July 1st, 2013, I go in. July 4th, I watch the fireworks through this crack in this 15-foot high fence, way in the distance. They're tiny. I'm feeling very sorry for myself. Earlier that day, my son, who was 1.5, had come in and was crying. And that affected me, like... And I'm having this terrible, terrible day. And so I'm laying in my bed late at night, and I'm reading the big book. It's like, the book they give you when you go to 12-step meeting. And it says, it's the spiritual part of it. And it says, go to the back. And I go to the back of the book, and it says, you don't have... I'm going to paraphrase. You don't have to believe in God. You got to be open-minded to something. And like when I read it, it was like, boom. I felt this feeling of unity, of connection with mankind, which I know sounds cheesy, but I had this sense that if I could hang on to that, maybe I'd be okay, right?
Yeah.
And the next day, I started helping people. I'm helping other dudes in detox, like talking to them, like, "Hey, man, you can do it." Meanwhile, I'm in detox myself, right?
Of course.
But something shifted, and so I get out of there. I go back to 12-step program, go back to AA. I get a sponsor. I do what they call work the steps. And, in this process, you learn to like that you're the problem. I learned I'm the problem. I learned that something's trying to help me, and I'm the one in the way. I'm messing up my own life. Like, I'm trying to kill myself, and it's like, let God, or whatever your version of it, and that's the cool thing about A, is that you can choose your own higher power.
Right.
And so you learn that something's trying to help you, and if you just turn your life over to it, maybe you won't keep screwing it up.
Right.
One, you can't drink. Two, you have to be abstinent, which is, a real sticking point for a lot of people with alcoholism. And so, but I go, I'm not going to drink anymore, and because I'm miserable drinking. I'm miserable sober too, right? That's alcoholism, untreated alcoholism. But at least I'm not going to drink, so I'm going to commit to being miserable sober. And so in the steps, you turn your life over, you look at yourself, you do a searching, fearless moral inventory where you write down the reasons why you think you are the way you are. All the people that have messed me up, and all the people I'm mad at, and all the stuff that's wrong. And then you go through another process, and of course those are the people you got to make amends to, right? You got to do this whole thing. But when you do that, you've changed. I've changed. I'm not in charge. It's a friendly universe. Something's trying to help me. And if I let it, it will. And then I make amends. I don't have to defend myself anymore. I don't have to hide anymore. I don't have to do any of that, right? And so when you do that, like, I had this sense I was dying. I did. I believed I was going to be dead soon. And that sense lifted. And then it's like your whole life opens up. My whole life opened up. And it's like, all right, I can do other stuff. Like, I'm not going to die from alcoholism. And then the real magic is that I didn't want to drink anymore. And I never thought that would ever happen. There wasn't a second of a day where I wasn't thinking about drinking or recovering from drinking or thinking about not drinking. And I went and I woke up, and it had been like 2 weeks before I thought about it. And that was a magical feeling for someone like me. And, unfortunately, I kind of put my hands back on the wheel of my life, and I said, I'm going to make money, and I'm going to chase girls. and I lost that feeling, right? But it's okay, because I stayed connected to, the recovery community and the 12-step community, and my sponsor at the time and my friends at the time.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a self-correcting program. If you get off, if you're still there, you'll get kind of like brought back in. So 2 years sober, I am depressed, and I'm in a bad relationship, and I'm a realtor, and I'm just miserable. And I remember talking to an old timer and saying, I don't want to wake up sometimes. Like, I'm just depressed. And he said, well, are you meditating? And I said, I'm not that depressed. Right? And I heard myself say it. And he was like, you're an idiot. And it's like, And so like it was another epiphany. Like
Yeah.
I was having what they call, I believe, a dark night of the soul. Like nothing worked anymore, and I kind of woke up in the Matrix. You know that feeling, like, where it's like I'm doing all these things that I think I'm supposed to be doing because I've been told I'm supposed to be doing them, and none of them are bringing me any joy, no sense of purpose. You know what I mean? And so I started searching, and I started listening to podcasts and YouTube people and reading books, meditating, dude, like a lot of meditating, a lot of praying, and really like trying to understand what is my sense of spirituality, like what is God in me, who am I, who do I love, who do I want to be. I have a little boy at the time too, and it's like this dysfunction has got to end sometime. And so I'm doing all this stuff, and I come up with this idea that I'm going to change my life. I'm going to reinvent myself. So I cut off the relationship for good. Done. I start going to therapy, and it's a therapist who had worked with my parents and who had worked with my mother. So she had the whole, it's like, that's like therapy on steroids, dude, right? And so, and I want answers. It's not like I'm in there, and I really want to get better. And so I'm doing all this stuff, and I'm reading all this stuff, and I'm crying in therapy all the time, and I start to address some of this childhood stuff that I've just suppressed or blamed. And I remember I had one epiphany where I'm looking at my son, and I'm mad. I'm mad about my childhood. And I'm looking at him, and he was like 2 or 3 at the time. And I think, whatever was done wasn't done to me. It was done to a little boy. And why am I still acting like a little boy? Why do I still feel like a little boy? And then I realized that, like, everybody's just doing their best, right? Whatever they did or didn't do, it was their, you know what I mean? It wasn't intentional. And so I just was like letting go. And then I said, I'm gonna change everything. So I sell this house I'm living in. I get rid of all my furniture, all my stuff, and I moved down to Denver. I was living in Conifer in a big house. And it wasn't my dream house. I don't know why I was living there. It sounded good. The relationship, the whole thing with relationships and being in a relationship wasn't making me happy. So I was like, forget it. And so I sold the house, and I moved down to Denver, and I got like a little condo. I'd held on to this little condo forever in Capitol Hill, down the street from here. And I just, I called my boss, and I said, I don't like this job. And he says, well, then don't do it. But keep your license. He's a good dude, my real estate boss. Keep your license, keep doing it. So I start like searching for my purpose. What's my purpose? Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely, I do.
I'm meditating. I'm listening to these different people. I'm like exploring the law of attraction. You know what I mean? All that stuff.
All the good stuff.
And I want to destroy my story. I want to destroy my negative, disempowering beliefs. I want to be a different person, right? And so I'm going to a lot of meetings too, and just all this stuff. And so I believe that I redesigned my life on the floor of that condo, meditating, because I didn't know what I was going to do, but I was searching, following the threads. What am I good at? What do I have to offer? What can I do? And I wanted to serve. I wanted to I like alcoholics and drug addicts. I love alcoholics and drug addicts because I'm one of them, right? And how can I make a living doing that, right? And so it wasn't even really about money. It's like, how can I survive? And so I'm watching this documentary called Bob and the Monster. It's Bob Forrest. He's an addictions counselor, and he was also a rock star. That's why I'm watching it.
There you go.
And so they got John Frusciante from the Red Hot Chili Peppers into rehab, and I was like, that's cool. I can do that, right? So this is how it's happening. And so he was part of an organization called Music Cares. And so I look up Music Cares. There's one meeting. It's in Fort Collins, one night a week. I go up there, and I stay after, and I'm talking to the guy that ran it, who's also a counselor. And I'm like, well, what can I do? And I'm just asking him. And he said, what do we need? What do we need in the recovery community? And he said, we need sober houses. And I didn't even know what it was. And so I'm driving back to Denver, And it occurs to me that not am I going to do it, it's done. Mm-hmm. It hasn't been done, but it's done. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to be a sober house owner kind of guy. And so I get my father's help to buy a house, and we buy this big house. It's down there. And my vision is hot part of the city, big, nice house, someplace where I'd want to go if God forbid, I relapse.
Yeah.
And close to 12-step meetings, close to public transportation, museums, coffee shops, restaurants, art, culture, all that stuff, right? And I set it up, and it's like, I want them to find their own magic, just like I found magic, right, in recovery. And I'm like rejuvenated, and I'm reborn. And I didn't even know I was looking for a career. I really didn't. I thought I'd have one house and sell real estate, and I'd be able to pay the bills. And it turns out that there's a real need for structured, accountable, sober housing that like really has people's interest at heart and helps in that capacity, with stress group unity and community and fellowship. And so I opened that house, and then I opened another house, and then I keep opening houses, and I keep adding employees. And in that space, when you're doing what I believe is my God-given purpose, right? And I don't care if that sounds cheesy. That's what it is to me. People come, they're attracted to you. I don't have to go out and get the right people. Right. They come, and because they want to be part of it, right? And it's their purposeful life too, right? And so I'm doing this thing, and I get so I'm opening these houses, and I have all the staff, and we're having a lot of fun. We're helping a lot of people. And if there's a lot of stress too, but whatever. And so I get in a fight with the city of Denver. I open up a house in a neighborhood, and the neighborhood goes, nope, not in our neighborhood. You're not putting all these drug addicts and alcoholics in our block. And I get in a big fight, and I get in a fight with Denver. And so once again, I'm talking to a friend, and he says, well, you got all these houses. Why don't you open a treatment, like outpatient treatment? Once again, I'm driving past my exit. You know what I mean? Because I'm just in my head, and I'm excited. And it's like, not only am I going to do it, it's already done. Right? And so I don't even know anything about it. I don't know. There's no like class for these things, and if there is, I don't know what it is. But it's like that that entrepreneurial spirit. I'm going to do it. I'm going to open it. I don't care how to do it, and I don't care. It's just like take one step, right? And then it's like you take one step, and the universe rearranges around your purpose and what's supposed to happen. And so now I have outpatient treatment, and 18 employees, 8 houses, 70 beds, something like that, and outpatient treatment, right? And so now we're charging insurance, and I got like real employees. Meanwhile, I'm just a guy who 40 years ago was laying on the floor like going, what can I do? And all of a sudden now I'm a CEO. It's like, what? And so that's it. And it's like, now I'm talking to you about it, right?
Of course.
So now we're sitting in this community center, and that's like a new thing for me, because this isn't going to be a big money maker. It's the right thing to do, though, right? And it's like contributing to the community. I'm making an impact, right?
So I want to unpack a little bit more in regards to, you're talking about, you start getting into meditation, and you're going through this period of I want answers, and you're searching and looking and all that. What did you find, Brice, in that season of life when you were searching and looking for answers? What did you find, in terms of who you are and what your purpose or what your life is supposed to be all about?
So when you get to that dark night of the soul, right, where you're just miserable and you don't care if you die, it's like you're like really in touch with something. Like that's actually a really good place to be. And another good place to be is I don't know how I'm going to fix this. Like if I think I have answers, I'm probably going to screw it up, right? It's like I didn't know what I was going to do, so I'm searching. And I started saying yes to things that I wouldn't have said yes to before. And just, like being brave is not the absence of fear. It's not. It's just doing it anyway. And the fear is all in our head.
Absolutely.
And so you just go and you do it and you go, well, that wasn't so bad. Let me try something else. And I went through this period where I said yes to everything. And I still didn't know what I was going to do. I did a radio show, kind of like you're doing this, to see, is this my purpose? Is this what I do? And it's not, which is fine. Hopefully it's yours, right?
100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I tried it, and I did stand-up comedy, sober. I'd never done that before. I was scared to talk to people. So I did this thing called Landmark, which is like a transformational coaching type course. I did that. So I just started saying yes, and I started facing fears. And the more I did it, the more they disappeared, right? And I still have it, but just like what was your question, man?
Well, just no, you're fine. You're fine. So you're saying you're going through this season of saying yes, and you're exploring and adventuring, trying all these different things, new things. Through that season, through that period of saying yes to everything, what was that like one big find in regards to who you are?
It's not about the answers. It's about the questions. It's about what questions am I asking, and it's not about like. If I set out to have a treatment center with all these sober houses and all these beds, I would have failed. I did one step, and the universe rearranged. And it's like one step, one day at a time, next right thing, right? Whatever feels good and whatever helps people, right? It's like about being authentic, letting the universe work through me, and contributing to society, into the world, into my people, alcoholics and drug addicts, right? And that's been like my secret to success. It's not about knowing all the answers. Right. I still don't know what I'm doing. And I no longer have fear that everyone's going to figure that out. Because the heck with it, right? It's like, at least I'm doing something. The difference between someone who's successful and someone who's not sometimes is not their talent or ability or money or backing. It's just one dude's willing to do it.
Powerful.
You know what I mean?
I do. Yeah, I'm in that period of life right now where it's just like I do have a foundation in my life. I do have vision and all that type of stuff. But at the end of the day, it's like, it's my life and nobody's ever lived my life. And I've just got to, like you said, I actually have one day tattooed on my right shin because that's how I live my life, one day at a time. And I'm a big proponent of like, just take one step in the right direction, one day at a time. Right. Just keep moving, keep doing something, and you use the terminology of the universe will align. If you just keep stepping, if you just keep moving forward, I believe that breakthrough will happen. What you're meant for will come to fruition. You know what I mean?
I do.
So yeah, I'm right in alignment with you. Now earlier. You had mentioned about finding this love for yourself in our early part of our conversation. Have you been able to step into loving yourself, or is that still a daily struggle for you?
It's a daily struggle, but it's something happens between midnight and 6 a.m. I wake up negative again. That's the morning meditation, right? Okay, and it's like, it doesn't mean I have to live like that. It just means that that's just kind of how I am, right? Or I'm trying not to be that way. But I don't want to they talk about where you try to be positive all the time, spiritual bypassing. I want to own the dark parts. I want to understand, you know what I mean? Because it takes the power away from it. And there's not a lot I can do about it, right? And so I wake up and I try to get out of it. And if it takes me all day to get out of it, it takes me all day to get out of it. Whatever, right? I don't give into it the way I used to when I was younger. That depression, I don't own it anymore. I fight it. I don't want to give into it. I want to fight it, right? And I have these moments. Like it can last for a moment. It can last for a week. It's lasted for months where I'm in the flow. Like I'm in it and I'm part of it and I can feel it, right? I don't always feel it. But I do feel it sometimes, and it's really powerful. It's like I am co-creating life with a higher power, like God, I call it God, whatever people call it.
Yeah.
You can feel it, and then like your brain will come back and say, "Oh, that's ridiculous, that's silly." I don't listen to that anymore, right? I just go with like when my heart's open and I'm doing it, and I can feel that the energy, right?
Yeah.
And so that's like been that's the good part. And I've also learned to do another thing, like when I meditate, when I manifest, like when I was trying to decide what I was going to do, and I knew I wanted a sober house. It took a while to get the first one. I would meditate, and I would be grateful for already having the sober house, right? And I would feel, what's it going to be like to be in that house? What's it going to feel like to be with those guys? Because I don't think my brain knows the difference between reality and thinking about it. And if I can attach gratitude to it, I believe that like you start to vibrate at that level. And it pulled me towards it. You know what I mean?
Powerful.
And so I can't always do that because real life happens, right? Like like I said, I'm getting divorced, and that's a bummer. But I still have my purpose, and so that's I don't know.
One step. One day at a time. Right?
One step, one day at a time, and you just keep going, and you just keep going. And then you look back and you go, okay, all right, it's working, or whatever's working. And like I have these epiphanies, like this all started as a vision, and like we have these large meetings, and there's all these people, and they're all getting well from a fatal chronic disease, and it's really powerful to watch. And it's like, this started in my head. And not exactly like that, but it's like the vision of just set it up and let them find their own magic, and they are.
I would like to just talk about kind of like the relationship aspect of your story. And you can share whatever you want to share or not share. That's fine. But just even in your earlier years, you talked about having this girlfriend, and then you're like, hey, like I just gotta this has to end because it's not right, toxic, whatever. Where's the like kind of like the intimate relationship side of things? Because that seems like you've alluded to it a little bit throughout your story, but I think that has probably played a pretty big part of your story and a pretty big part of your life. So how have you been able to navigate that and work through that, and just maybe what have you learned from those intimate relationships that you've experienced in your life?
Well, earlier on, I felt that I needed that. I needed to be in a relationship because that's what you're supposed to do.
For sure, yeah.
And but it's like if you back up and you look at the big picture, like my grandparents, like their parents probably weren't supposed to live past 40 or 50.
Right, yeah.
So it was different then, right? And then my grandparents, they grew up in the Depression. My grandfather literally grew up in the Great Depression. He didn't die till he was 104.
Yeah.
And so it was different. And now, like, our parents are married or they're divorced. A lot of people get divorced.
Yeah.
They're questioning these things. Like, we're kind of looking at these things like, is this the way things are supposed to be? Is it the way things were? And it's like, so just because I make a bad decision or our lives are together, me and a woman's lives are together for a certain period of time, does not mean it's a life sentence. And I have a purpose, right?
Yeah.
I can't, that's the thing, is my purpose, right? That's what gives me joy. That's what lights me up.
Yeah.
And, relationships are nice, but maybe I'm just broken. Maybe I'm just a broken person when it comes to relationships. That's fine, too.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't understand relationships. I have a therapist and we talk about it. And everybody says, like, when you stop looking, it'll happen. So great,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe, a lot of people say we have bad pickers. Maybe I'm attracted to the wrong women. I don't know.
But you just mentioned that when you were younger, you thought you needed a relationship.
Absolutely.
But now, are you at that point where you have come to kind of that conclusion that, hey, you know what? I have my purpose. That's what, like you said, that's what, lights me up. I don't need a relationship to fulfill my purpose.
No,
or is it still just kind of a struggle with, like, man, there's something in me that wants that relationship. I've got my purpose, but is there still some inner turmoil with all that?
I don't think so. I think I've really come to accept that, like, growing up, I had this sense that my well-being did not come from within. My sense of well-being came from organizing life the way I thought that it would make me happy, and it never, ever did.
Yeah.
Even when I get my way, I'm not happy, right? And so if you can't be happy with yourself, adding somebody else to the mix is just like not good. It's not good, right? But everybody tries it. Not everybody, but the majority of people, I just think, are like living in the matrix. I think that they're going through the motions of what society tells them, their parents tell them, what they think they're doing.
Yeah, their
intentions are good.
Right.
But there's so many unhappy people, and I don't know. Maybe I'm not meant to be in a relationship like that, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I don't have the answers. It's about the questions. Once again.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay, cool. Now, if somebody's listening to this, Brice, we've gone for 65 minutes, so we're gonna kind of head towards the finish line, wrap things up. But if somebody's listening to this and on some point of your sharing, at some point of your story, they've resonated. Maybe they're struggling with drugs and alcohol themselves. Maybe they have a loved one that their heart is just breaking because they're struggling with drugs and alcohol. What would you just want to speak to the people that have some sort of drug, alcohol addiction, whether it's in their own personal life or in a friend's life, something like that? What would you like to speak to those people right now?
It's an epidemic right now. There's an opiate epidemic. Crystal meth is way on the rise.
Yeah.
A lot of young people feel disconnected. There's a lot of drugs out there. And it's been going on for centuries, right? And,
for sure.
Until this century, there really has been no way to help people with alcoholism or addiction. It wasn't even seen as a disease. And now, like, the behavioral healthcare system is broken. We treat a chronic, fatal disease with a 30-day treatment model. And then we're like shocked when it doesn't work. So my company is it's aftercare. So if your loved one is struggling with addiction, you're not going to fix it with a 30-day stint in rehab. It's got to be, recovery starts the day after rehab, and the day after that, and the day after that, and the day after that. And you got to reach out for help, and come up with a long-term care plan for your loved one. They have a disease, right? And so send them somewhere, get them assessed, and they're going to be assessed with substance use disorder. Accept that diagnosis. If they have a co-occurring disorder like depression or anxiety, accept that diagnosis. Don't do that thing most people go, it's like, well, he's different. My son or my daughter, they're different. They're not like other people. They're not. They have the same disease that I have, and you can overcome it, right? But there needs to be like a commitment to overcoming it, and everybody needs to work on it. The whole family needs to work on it. So, I don't know. I mean, I'd like it if send them to rehab, come up with an aftercare plan, sober living, therapy, outpatient treatment. It's never gonna happen. Like, what do we all want? Is to be happy, and we want our loved ones to have a high quality life, right? And the fastest way to that high quality life is rehab and then a long-term care plan. A long-term care plan, right?
Yeah,
Not rehab and then back to whatever they were doing, right? So whatever the family's agenda is, whatever the person's agenda is, might have to go on the back burner. And this disease needs to be addressed. And,
perfect.
I know I'm not trying to do a sales pitch, but
but if somebody's in the Denver area, I mean, they can reach out to you, right? They
can reach out to me, and if we're not the right fit, we'll send them somewhere else.
Right.
If they don't have the right insurance, there's all kinds of suggestions. I got sober going to AA, man. Like, it's like, you can do it, right?
Absolutely.
But I would spare people the pain and drama, and two and a half decades. I mean, this disease stole 10,000 days of my life. In and around. That's a long time.
That's a very long time.
You know, and if I could go back and do it and go through life sober and well-intentioned and able to like deliver when things came across my plate in my life, and I would travel and do all kinds of great things, you know, make an impact on the world early on. I would like to see more people do that rather than struggle with disease. So it will kill you.
A couple more things here, and then we'll wrap it up. You mentioned to me that you just kind of came from working out before we turned on the mic to have this conversation. How has fitness been a powerful tool in your toolbox in your recovery and just day-to-day life?
Yeah, it's a big part of my recovery. I go 3 or 4 times a week. I have a trainer. I was in really bad shape when I finally stopped drinking. I was way overweight, and I was just falling apart, basically. And now it's like I'm addicted to working out, right? I'm addicted to working out. I'm addicted to watching people get better. But I go to the gym as often as 4 or 5 times a week.
Cool.
Going scuba diving soon. Like you have one life to live, as far as I know, and I like working out. You know, I like doing stuff. I like being active.
Moving,
it feels good, and
absolutely.
You look better and you feel better, and like that gives confidence, right?
For sure, yeah. Is that something like fitness and movement? Is that something for somebody that's maybe in that recovery process that you would suggest them, if they're not doing it already, somehow find a way to move more, exercise and things like that?
You got to do everything, but I know some people that get they clean up and they sober up, and that is their program. It's going to the gym, which I'm not sure how healthy that is. I think you need like a well-rounded, life. You need a spiritual program. You need a physical program. If you need therapy, go to therapy. You need to get your inner circle of friends and connect with people. But I know people that is it. That's their higher power, is the gym.
Right.
Keeps them sober.
Cool. Okay, last question before I ask you the wrap up question here. You've mentioned that you have a couple kids and stuff.
Yeah.
What has fatherhood meant to you, and what has that really taught you about yourself?
When you have like just being there, like watching my sons, both of them being born, it's like I cry every time. It's like so much emotion, and it's like it's not like I love them more than myself. I've never had that feeling, right? Like my first son, when I was trying to get sober and struggling, and still feeling very self-centered. Like I had this baby, this boy, and it's like, he's hungry, I'll feed him. He's bored, I'll entertain him. He went to the bathroom, I'll change him. And I became other-centered rather than self-centered. I got through my first 6 months of my sobriety raising this little boy, right? And now I have another little boy, and it's like I see him and I just cry, and it's just... the love, it's not, that love didn't exist for me before, and it's like something new, and fatherhood's great. Great.
It's helped you get your eyes off yourself and get your eyes on somebody else, right?
Yeah, it's been a great experience, and it's amazing. I don't even know how to explain fatherhood.
I love it.
It's just one of these things that I do, and it's like, holy moly, you're going to hand me a baby? Like, I don't even know who I am, right? And then you just kind of do, and you do. And it's not about knowing all the answers, it's about the questions once again.
Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
The last question that I have for you, Brice, what sets your soul on fire?
Watching people get better, man. I just love it. I love watching a hopeless drug addict who's just so full of crap and like despair and hopeless, and watch them like come and sit and listen, and you can see the lights go off in their head, and you can see the light come on in their eyes, and then they're laughing, and then they have a job, and their family's not mad at them anymore, and then they get better, and then they take it and they carry it to somebody else, right? They carry the message. That's what lights me up, is that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, Brice, if somebody wants to kind of follow along your own personal journey, if somebody wants to find out just more about the houses and the recovery and everything that you have going on, where can people find you? Where can people reach out? Where can people get connected?
They can go to Facebook and they can search Mile High Sober Living. They can search Mile High Continuing Care. They can search for Brice Hancock. MileHighSoberLiving.com, MileHighContinuingCare.com. I believe there's a BriceHancock.com.
Okay. You're on Instagram too?
I'm on Instagram too, Brice Hancock or Sober Dad Official, or Mile High Continuing Care or Mile High Sober Living. I'm not hard to find.
No.
Yeah, I'm really easy to find.
And I sent you a message on Messenger, Facebook Messenger, and
yep.
we conversed quickly and efficiently, and here we are.
Yeah, and here we are.
Yeah, cool. So, Brice, I just personally want to thank you for the opportunity to bring you onto the podcast. I want to thank you, and I greatly appreciate you sharing your story and being raw, real, and transparent. I know that as we share our stories, people are going to hear our stories, and people are going to be positively impacted. So, man to man, I really appreciate the opportunity today, and thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you.
For sure. So, listeners, I just want to thank you once again for tuning into the 127 Fit podcast. If you would like to find out more about myself and the guests that I'm bringing onto the podcast, you can find me on @127fit, which that is Instagram. Facebook is @QuentinVars. LinkedIn is @QuentinVars. If you guys are looking to lose weight, gain muscle, or get healthier going into 2020, I am now locally here in the Denver area, personal training, coaching, just helping people live those healthier lives. If you're interested in any type of coaching or training, please email me at 127fit@gmail.com. And when you email me, just tell me a little bit about yourself. We will set up a free fitness consultation. We'll just kind of have a call and discuss some things. We'll look at your fitness goals. We'll talk about what's going on in your life, and we will get ready to rock and roll in terms of 2020. If you guys are finding, which I know you are, value in a specific episode or episodes of the 127 Fit podcast, if you would do a huge favor for me and take that episode or episodes and share it on your Facebook and Instagram stories using the hashtag #BeSomeoneToFollow, that would be super cool. Another huge favor, if you guys would just leave a 5-star rating and review for the podcast, and then again, share. Just the more people that have an opportunity to check out the podcast, to listen to the podcast, the more people are going to be positively impacted. That's the name of the game. And per the usual, I will leave you with Proverbs 24:10, which states, "If you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small." This time until next time, I will catch you guys later.